All right, guys, so I come to talk to you today a little bit about Agenda 2030 and what it means for you. All right, so there you can go ahead and see the link that you can go to actually download this document. Now you're going to see a lot of stuff that looks good, but we're going to get through today with some videos from news agencies on what it really does mean. All right, so the first one is end poverty in all its forms everywhere. What that means? Put everyone on government welfare, food stamps, housing subsidies, and handouts that make them obedient slaves to global government. Or as you may also know it as universal basic income. Never allow people upward mobility to help themselves. Instead, teach mass victimization and obedience to a government that provides monthly allowance money for basic essentials like food and medicine, labeling it ending poverty. Now, a video coming up here is going to talk a little bit about a presidential candidate for 2020 that wants to give everybody $1,000 a month.
If you've heard anything about me, you've heard that there's an Asian man running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. And all of those things are true. We will take this case all the way to the White House and win because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math.
Imagine that. So we'll move on to the next one. All right, goal number 2. End hunger, achieve food security, and improved nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. That sounds really good. But what that really means is invade the entire planet with GMOs and Monsanto's patented seeds while increasing the use of deadly herbicides under the false claim of increased output of food crops. We all know this planet's very overpopulated, and plants can't keep up with it, so they have to make them. That's where Monsanto has come in. Engineer genetically modified plants to boost specific vitamin chemicals while having no idea of the long-term consequences of genetic pollution or cross-species genetic experiments carried out openly in a fragile ecosystem. Exactly, a fragile ecosystem. Okay? Now, a video coming up now is going to be very short. It's a clip from South Africa where people are protesting it.
In our modern day world, we are experiencing an absolute nightmare as far as the corporatization of our food. And besides the normal pesticides and herbicides that have already become problematic over the years, there's now a new technology called genetically modified organisms, which are extremely concerning. There's over 32 companies, over 32 countries in the world that have banned GMOs. There are a long list of scientists and doctors that have clearly said there's not enough research on this to be safely allowed into our supermarkets.
But nobody has a solution for it. Goal 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. That sounds great. What does that mean? Mandate 100+ vaccines for all children and adults at gunpoint, threatening parents with arrest and imprisonment if they refuse to cooperate. While it hasn't gotten that bad yet, a video you're about to see, there's a mandatory vaccine in New York City to try to combat the measles outbreak. Well, and again, that sounds great, but we're also mandating that people get vaccines. Some people don't want that. Push heavy medication use on children and teens while rolling out screening programs called mass medication prevention programs and claim they improve the health of citizens. Some conspiracy theorists even believe that by doing these mandatory vaccines is how they're going to get the chip into you. I don't know about that.
Here in New York City tonight, authorities have declared a public health emergency amid this alarming spike in the number of measles cases. Some families, in fact, with this emergency could now face fines of up to $1,000. So why are so many communities across this country suddenly facing a measles scare? Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef tonight.
Tonight, a public health emergency in New York City after that rapid spike in cases of the measles.
We have a situation now where children are in danger.
Officials mandating vaccines and issuing fines up to $1,000 for anyone who doesn't comply.
Goal number 4, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for all. Well, that sounds good. But then we're going to really say push a false history and a dumbed down education under Common Core education standards. Common Core means everybody's going to get taught the same thing, the same curriculum. As we all know, schools in Baltimore versus Tampa may not have the same curriculum. Obviously, certain events of history, such as the Civil War, are taught differently across the country. So we want everybody to be taught the same thing, and that will produce obedient workers rather than independent thinkers. Never let people learn real history, or else they might realize they don't want to repeat it. That's a good point to put down there. All right. Goal number 5, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Well, that sounds good, and we should have been doing that to begin with, but what this also could mean is criminalize Christianity, marginalize heterosexuality, demonize males, and promote the LGBT agenda everywhere. I'm okay, and I'm all there for gay rights. I should say, not just say gay rights, equal rights amongst everybody. Well, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You should have equal rights. You shouldn't be denied housing because you like women or you like men or whatever. The real goal is never equality, but rather the marginalization and shaming of anyone who expresses any male characteristics whatsoever. And as we can also kind of see that movement coming now, where people want to identify as a pickle, okay? Or they want to identify as whatever. We're trying to neutralize gender. We're trying to neutralize the roles of male and female. For the ultimate goal is to feminize society, creating widespread acceptance of gentle obedience along with the self-weakening ideas of communal property and sharing everything, because only male energy has the strength to rise up against oppression and fight for human rights. The suppression of male energy is key to keeping the population in a state of eternal acquiescence.
Welcome back to Follow the Money. A group of atheists in Wisconsin is demanding a town in Texas take down its Christmas nativity scene. So far, the Texas town says they'll take the display down when, quote, hell freezes over. Joining me now is Dan Barker of the atheist group, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Mr. Barker, what makes you think a Wisconsin atheist group should have the right to tell a town in Texas what to do?
I don't need to say anything about that. You guys are all aware of this whole thing. And again, in order to get control of your citizens under an eventual one world government, you have to take these different beliefs out, okay? Number 6, ensure availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Well, that sounds good. We kind of have that for the majority of the world now. But what that really is probably saying is allow powerful corporations to seize control of the world's water supplies and charge monopoly prices to build new water delivery infrastructure that ensures availability. So what we're going to say is you need water, you have to have it. Well, in order to have it, you got to pay us to get it. That's kind of the same as it is now for a lot of the world, because we have to pay our water bill. But some of the people don't do that. They'll actually take water out of the streams and stuff and use it for their own selves and don't have to pay anything. Water should be free, but unfortunately people don't know how to use consumption correctly and regulate how much they use. They would rather water their lawn instead of saving that for cooking or drinking or whatever and let Mother Nature water the lawn. Well, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. This is where we're going to get to this. Penalize coal, gas, and oil while pushing doomed to fail green energy subsidies to brain-dead startups headed by friends of the White House who all go bankrupt in 5 years or less. Well, you know, green energy subsidies, it's no different than the idea of anything really, but it takes a lot of thought. Okay, the green startups make for impressive speeches and media coverage, but because these companies are led by corrupt idiots rather than a capable entrepreneurs, they always go broke, right? And the media hopes you don't remember all of the fanfare surrounding their original launch. Now, this is a snippet of an article I found. I just put it on slides. I'm going to leave the link to the article in the description below. Promote sustained, inclusive, sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Now, what this person is saying is regulate small business out of existence with the government-mandated minimum wages that bankrupt entire sectors of the economy. And you're going to see a video following of a discussion there. Force employers to meet hiring quotas of LGBT workers while mandating wage tiers under a centrally planned work economy dictated by the government. We kind of have that now because, I mean, it's illegal to not give somebody of a minority a job because of what they are. If they're equally qualified, they have to get the job. There has to be equal balance of everybody in a company if a company is over a certain size. Okay, destroy free market economics and deny permits and licenses to those companies that don't obey government dictates. Well, we kind of have that now. If you don't do this, you don't do that, we're taking away your federal funding for this. I mean, it's just going to get into a more controlled, more way of getting you into everybody's, you know, complying it under a one world government.
Amazon's wage announcement has generated praise from influential figures on both the right and the left of the political aisle.
Higher wages, terrific. By the way, more people working and prospering, you've heard me say this before, is not inflationary. It's a good thing, not a bad thing.
There is absolutely now no reason why other profitable corporations like Walmart, like the fast food industry, like retail in general, and other employees, no reason now why they also should not be paying their employees at least $15 an hour.
Well, while there's been mounting pressure from political leaders, Amazon raised its minimum wage without any mandate from the government. But there are bills in Congress for a $15 minimum wage hike. So,
all right. Build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Again, that sounds great. But we're going to put nations into extreme debt with the World Bank, otherwise also known as the Federal Reserve, spending debt money to hire corrupt American corporations to build large-scale infrastructure projects that trap developing nations in an endless spiral of debt. We're kind of doing that now and have been for many, many decades about, you know, invading other countries and taking over and trying to turn them into democracies and things like that, because it is all based on that World Bank. You can also see the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. Reduce inequality within and among countries. It's for all countries. Punish the rich, the entrepreneurs, and the innovators, confiscating nearly all gains by those who choose to work and excel. Also, redistribute and confiscate wealth to the masses of non-working human parasites that feed off productive economy while contributing nothing to it, all while screaming about equality. We know that all too well. We call them entitled millennials, entitled Generation X, and entitled Generation Y. Especially for those of you that do any type of ride share or gig economy, you know it all too well. And people are getting away with more and more and more and not giving enough. So you kind of can start seeing with some of these events in today's world, you can kind of start seeing this coming into plan. That's what I'm trying to say. But it's coming into plan right under your daggone noses and nobody sees it. Okay? Number 11, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. What does that mean? Well, part of it means ban all gun ownership by private citizens, concentrating guns into the hands of obedient government enforcers who rule over an unarmed, enslaved class of impoverished workers. We're going to see a video about Jade Helm 15 here, and that's going to kind of give you an idea about how they were training for martial law and basically rounding everybody up. Criminalize living in the most rural areas by instituting Hunger Games-style protected areas in which the government will claim are owned by the people, even though no people are allowed to live there. Kind of like Area 51? Right. Force all humans to into densely packed, tightly controlled cities, aka FEMA camps, where they're under 24/7 surveillance and subject to easy manipulation by the government. I don't have to tell you, there's Walmarts, there's large facilities, warehouses, things like that that are closed, schools that are closed, and just sitting there vacant. For what reason? Again, I encourage you to do more research on Jade Helm 15.
Well, no country in the Western Hemisphere has failed more completely in more ways than Venezuela, sadly. Has a lot going for it. It had a huge middle class. It has, of course, the world's largest proven oil reserves. Today, it can't even feed itself. There's no toilet paper some days in Caracas. They're eating zoo animals. What happened? Well, you know what happened. They implemented socialism, and there were obvious and predictable and disastrous consequences. But that's not the whole story of what happened there. 6 years ago, the government of Venezuela passed a gun ban specifically designed to disarm the public. It, of course, did not make people safer. Venezuela is one of the highest murder rates in the world. That wasn't the point of it. The point was to make the people powerless, and it definitely did that.
Thanks for joining us. We are days away from the U.S. military descending on Central Texas for Jade Helm 15. The Army says it's an 8-week training exercise in a realistic setting, but they're not saying much beyond that. Fox 7's Elizabeth Saab is live in downtown with more. Elizabeth.
Mike, because of that, there's no shortage of controversy surrounding the U.S. military's largest training exercise. So what exactly are they training for? Well, it depends on who you ask.
The thing I can say about the Special Forces soldiers is they are the most elite soldiers on today's battlefield.
This highly decorated retired military veteran should know.
I've served with 10th Special Forces for 26 years.
He's asked us to hide his identity. A warning from the federal government came down about online threats from terror groups, but that's not stopping him from talking about Jade Helm.
Jade Helm 15, I've done this kind of training on a smaller scale.
The winds of conspiracy are swirling on the roads of Smithville. This man believes for good reason.
They just don't train to call it training. There's a purpose behind this.
The Green Beret says
they're on a budget, that they're not going to spend all their money on one training exercise where they can get the same effect on federal land for the fraction of the cost.
And the potential for something much bigger lies ahead.
I think Jade Helm is a training exercise to prepare them for attack, or if they have to declare martial law because there is a mass casualties in the southern borders.
They're like a child pushing the envelope. You know, let's see what these people will take now.
Joe and Tom Watts have lived in Smithville for 15 years. Tom worked for the government for more than 20, including for NASA and the NSA.
As soon as they use the word transparency, I see the opaqueness come in.
The 60 troops stationed here for the next 8 weeks are scheduled to train in the area.
What 15 landowners just suddenly called the government and said, hey, you want to come train on my property? I don't care about my livestock or my crops.
They first heard about the operation in May and are angry it's been shrouded in secrecy from the White House.
We have a president who circumvents the Constitution, ignores the Constitution. We have a Congress who backs him up. It's just one little thing after another.
They also blame their local government.
I'm very disappointed in our county commissioners for inviting these people and not making it public to the citizens of Bastrop County before they made that decision.
Despite the hype around Jade Helm, the only gun store in town says they haven't seen their sales spike.
That's not something that we want to do to take advantage of the, of the added hysteria for that. We don't want to boost that. So that's it's just not something that we're going to do.
They too say their county officials are partly responsible for the chaos.
They really fueled the distrust in the citizens because the decision was made. It was out of our hands.
People are making much ado about nothing, I think.
Whatever that nothing ends up being around here,
I don't think anyone in this county is against our military training.
It will be talked about for at least the next 8 weeks.
If you're honest with us, we'll open our houses up for them to train.
But because they weren't,
it makes us raise an eyebrow on what's really going on.
So will anyone get to see this training? Well, it's not open to the public, and a Jade Helm spokesperson tells us the media is not invited either. He does say, though, if an opportunity presents itself during the next 8 weeks, they'll let us know. Mike?
Okay, Elizabeth Saub for us.
Number 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. By begin levying punitive taxes on the consumption of fossil fuels and electricity, forcing people to live under conditions of worsening standards of living that increasingly resemble third world conditions. So we're going to use social influence campaigns in TV, movies, and social media to shame people who use gasoline, water, electricity into establishing a social construct of ninnies and tattlers who rat out their neighbors in exchange for food credit rewards. That makes a lot of sense. Because there are people, if you just said right now, you can't do this, you can't. How many times have you seen people watering their lawn when the state or the county has said, don't do it because we're in a drought? They're doing it anyway. So now if we're living around a neighborhood where we might have neighbors tattling on us because they want to get food credit rewards, there you go, and this is where we're going to see the Chinese social video here. Number 13, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. Well, that sounds good, right? But here's what we're going to do. Set energy consumption quotas on each human being and start punishing or even criminalizing lifestyle decisions that exceed energy usage limits set by governments. We just talked about that. Institute total surveillance of individuals in order to track and calculate their energy consumption. I kind of have that now with meters and things, but maybe it's going to get a little bit more detail, a little bit more petty. Penalize private vehicle ownership and force the masses onto public transit where TSA grunts and facial recognition cameras can monitor and record the movement of every person in society like a scene ripped right out of the Minority Report. Okay, going back to that social video on China, they already have that facial recognition. They can tell who you are, where you are, what you're doing. And if your score is bad enough, there's times where they won't even let you use the train. Okay? All this is coming into action. It's just right under people's noses. And you know, when people hear me talking about certain things like Kennedy and stuff, they go, oh, you're full of shit. No, I'm not. Not one bit. Number 14, conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. Okay, well, that could mean ban most ocean fishing, plunging the food supply into an extreme shortage and causing runaway food price inflation that puts even more people into economic desperation. And you're going to criminalize the operation of private fishing vessels and place all ocean fishing operations under a control of a government central planning. So only authorized people by the government are going to be allowed to do the fishing. Only allowed favored corporations to conduct ocean fishing operations and make this decision based entirely on which corporations give the most campaign contributions to corporate lawmakers. We're having that now. I mean, there are federal limits to the presidential campaign contributions, and there are laws regarding the government contributions, or I'm sorry, corporate contributions, all kinds of stuff. But I think it's going to get a little bit more tight-knit. Number 15, protect, restore, promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reserve land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. We've seen this already with the ranchers out west. We're going to roll out Agenda 21 and force humans off the land and into controlled cities, Criminalize, okay, we already did that with the Native Americans. That was long before Agenda 21 was written. Criminalize private land ownership, including ranches and agricultural tracts. It's already being done. Tightly control all agriculture through a corporate, corrupted government bureaucracy whose policies are determined almost entirely by Monsanto while being rubber-stamped by the USDA. Monsanto has huge control over our world and what happens and the food that you're eating, okay? Everything, all right? Ban wood stoves, rainwater collection, and home gardening in order to criminalize self-reliance and force total dependence on the government. That, too, is already happening in many cases, especially here in Florida. Number 16, promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Well, this could mean granting legal immunity to illegal aliens and protected minority groups which will be free to engage in any legal activity, including openly calling for the mass murder of police officers, because there are new protected class in society. This kind of has happened already, but a lot of the Democrats are working to get open borders, and, well, we know Trump's not going to have that. Inclusive institutions means granting favorable tax structures and government grants to corporations that hire LGBT workers or whatever groups are currently in favor with the central planners in the government. Again, I don't have a problem with hiring gay people or transgender people, only if they're qualified for the job. If they've been on the ass for the last 4 or 5 years and they didn't graduate high school, I'm not going to hire them as a software developer. Nor would I hire anyone black or white or Asian or Mexican or Indian, any of it. If they don't have the means to prove that they're qualified for the job, they don't get it. And they're going to use the IRS and other federal agencies to selectively punish unfavorable groups with punitive audits and regulatory harassment, all while ignoring the criminal activities of favored corporations that are friends of the political elite. That already is happening. Same with social media censoring. If you say something on social media that YouTube or Facebook or Instagram don't like or goes against their political agenda, they shut you down. And lastly, but not least, number 17, strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. Enact global trade mandates that override national laws while granting unrestricted imperialism powers to companies like Monsanto, Dow Chemical, R.J. Reynolds, and Coca-Cola and Merck. Well, we all know Monsanto, Big Pharma, tobacco, they all run this country and probably the world, okay? Now we want to give them unrestricted imperialism powers. Well, they have the money, you don't. So what are you going to do about it? Pass global trade pacts that bypass a nation's lawmakers and override intellectual property laws to make sure that the world's most powerful corporations maintain total monopolies over drugs, seeds, chemicals, and technology, and nullify national laws and demand total global obedience to trade agreements authored by powerful corporations and rubber-stamped by the UN. All right. One can only come to agree that a lot of these things that I just discussed from this article that I found, again, the link is in the description below, can only be discussed or can only be observed if you're actually opening your eyes and using your brain. That's it. You don't need somebody to lead you by the hand and have your phone with you going, oh yeah, the phone. You don't need the phone. You just need to open your eyes and look and see what's going on around you. Where test cases are, where people are getting more, cancer rates are up, HIV levels are down. I mean, and all these sound good on the outside shell, but when you start looking at what the bigger agenda is, what is it? Just briefly, I mean, there's theories out there now that Epstein's alive. He could be dead. We don't know. But if they were to let him go through the process like you and I would have to if that were us, they're not going to let him do that because the big names of people who are involved in Orgy Island are going to get out, and that affects the bigger plan. Just like Hillary and her fucking emails. Imagine why they couldn't find her emails, because if they prosecuted the bitch and they put her in jail, that affects the bigger plan. Again, I'll put the link to UN Agenda 2030 right there from the UN website in the bottom of this video. Okay? I encourage you to go and look. All right? And that's it. That's all I got for you.